I'm Chris.
I'm Adrian.
And I'm Jimmy.
Welcome back to Worldview Finder, episode 41.
41. That's almost half 100.
Almost. We did it everybody. 41. So,
Took a little break.
We had Easters and spring break and all that
There was a
stuff.
tornado, so we couldn't do it.
So our schedules finally aligned.
Who decided
like
spring break and Easter and April Fool's Day and
Jesus.
eclipse and all that
That's
should
when he
happen
rose,
within like
Adrian.
a week?
Yeah, I have some friends that are having a baby, and they announced it on Easter to their family. But the mom was like, "Is this an April Fool's joke?" They're like, "Tomorrow's April Fool's." Mom, and the mom didn't believe them.
That's funny.
Wow.
So,
Chris.
Did you know that the moon actually determines when Easter falls?
yeah,
I did not know
lunar
that.
cycle. So
That's fake news.
today, I'm telling you guys, I'm really excited.
I'm excited about
today's show.
today's
Might be
content.
3 hours long. I don't know.
Wow.
So
We've got a lot to talk
we're gonna
about.
talk about the sacrifice of doing nothing. We're talking about fish gone wrong.
It's incredible.
Some wiki games and podcasts, some things in the wiki space.
The wiki
We're going
space.
crazy.
The Wikiverse.
And then do shopping carts determine your worldview? Stick around for that because this is going to be a great discussion. It better be. You guys better not disappoint me. And then,
Jimmy and I are going in blind with
I
this
know.
conversation.
but first,
But first.
the dark side of kids television. So we're going to start on a serious note.
Okay,
actually.
so we're going to start on
Yeah.
a serious note, and then we'll segue from there. But, so have you guys seen, so if you guys aren't familiar, the viewers, I don't know what streaming platform
Max.
it was.
It's on Max.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Max, they just released a 4-part series called Quiet on Set.
Yeah, it's kind of blowing up right now. So if you haven't heard of it, you're living under a rock.
You're living under
Yes.
a rock. Yeah, so, but have you guys watched it?
I've not.
No, I'm not. I've watched a lot of stuff talking about it. But
Yeah.
I haven't actually watched
That's how
it.
she reads the Bible too. She just watches preachers and like, oh, I don't read it
Yeah,
myself. I
yeah,
just
it's
let other
fine.
people tell me about
I
it.
kind of know what it is.
That's
okay,
acceptable,
so me
right?
and Malia, we watched all of the episodes. So they were like an hour long, and there were 4 of them. So for people who don't know what it is or have not watched it, so basically it is exploring Dan Schneider specifically, and he's one of the producers and one of the creators of a lot of Nickelodeon shows in the late 90s and then early 2000s. And it's very controversial because it's very dark because it's the dark side of kids television.
Yeah.
And so it follows him and follows the different shows that are happening at that time and takes you kind of behind the scenes and shows you the dark side of kids TV. Because overall, one of the kind of weird things about it is one of the reoccurring themes that you see in a lot of these shows, and especially looking back, is taking these kids that are on these kids' TV shows and then putting them in these really sexualized situations.
Right, and they're all underage. Like they're really kids. Like,
Oh,
they're
yeah,
not,
like 13 years old.
they're not like Tom Holland
But
who's
they're
40 playing a
sexualized
15-year-old.
situations on the TV show.
Yes.
Like what kind of shows are
Yeah.
we talking about?
Yeah, so it
What?
started in it started in like the late 90s, but even shows like iCarly or Victorious. So there are definitely they put adult jokes in there, and then some suggestive different situations that they put these kids in.
So was it stuff that if kids watched it, they wouldn't get it? Kind of like, I mean, there's some Disney movies and some Pixar, not Pixar.
I mean, a lot of cartoons though.
Yeah, like I mean, the Trolls World Tour. I should talk, or not World Tour, but whatever the new one is.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's situations there where they say something and you're like, oh, that is a really actually very sexualized joke that my kids don't get. But
Yeah, because it wasn't, and I think it even kind of took it a step further than that, where it wasn't necessarily just an adult joke that went over kids' heads, but it was like putting these kids in situations that was, especially from an adult perspective, very clearly sexualized.
Okay.
So that, and then on top of that, some people that worked on Nickelodeon and were part of that, there were some instances where there's some sexual abuse and people that actually got arrested for that were working on Nickelodeon sets.
but then they knew that ahead of time and still let them work on the set, even though they knew that there was some. I thought they said Dan Schneider knew that these two people had been accused of stuff before.
Yeah, so there may have been accusations. I think once they actually got arrested for that kind of thing, then they got kicked off the show and like I think they went to prison or something. But so it was talking about that. And then Dan Schneider specifically, so he was kind of the mastermind behind all of these different shows. So he was the producer, he did some screenwriting, he even played in some of the shows and stuff like that. So the sexualizing of kids, and then he's got a really weird thing with feet where like, and you can see, because they show all these different clips and people that were on the cast of those times just talking about how he was. And one of the things he was really into was he got massages from like all these women that worked at Nickelodeon. Like that was one of the things where anytime you saw him, he was getting a massage from someone. So
okay. Yeah. Here's what frustrates me. Like, because it's dealing with kids.
Yeah.
And so did nobody on the set like say anything? Like and I'm glad those two people got arrested.
There was the one guy that I've heard is like kind of set up as the hero, that he would, you may know his name since you watched it, that he would kind of make sure that he was there.
Yeah.
To make sure that nothing went too far.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but so that was one of the questions that I had, and I'm sure a lot of people seeing this, because you see, and it actually gets a little bit worse, where you see these kids who actually end up being abused, and if not that, then they were definitely being sexualized. So the question is, how does this actually happen? Like, where were the parents, where were the adults, and everything like that? And from my understanding, a lot of it was the parents would kind of send them in, and they would have people that they would come with, but it was just the kids working there. So the parents were kind of disconnected from it in a lot of ways. And then
how were parents supposed to know? Like now, in retrospect, when we look back, of course you would now do that, but back,
but would you?
It's like sending your kid to any job.
Yeah.
You're not like you're going to stick around.
Well, because I listened to one of, it was actually about the show with somebody on YouTube, and they were saying that they even had like these pool parties that were specifically for the Nickelodeon kids, where their parents would just drop them off. So it's just all the kids there in bathing suits, and then just like the people that worked on Nickelodeon, so all the adults. So all the parents are just leaving them there at this pool party. And so, yeah, definitely looking back, it feels very weird. Like, how would you just leave your kid there?
But things that I've heard about, like working on a show or something, like especially for an extended period of time, it's like these people kind of become your family. Like you're with them more than anybody else. And this is where Worldview comes in, because your worldview is shaped by those around you. And so if the people around you are saying, no, this is okay, this isn't weird or anything like that, and especially if you're a kid and you look to an adult as an authority figure that you can trust. Yeah. And usually the people that are the creepy ones are very like outgoing and fun to be around and all this stuff, but then there's like that weird side of them, like, here, do this weird thing with your feet, and you're like, what?
So and that was actually kind of one of the main worldview questions I had for this, is because if you just went in there and you weren't exposed to any of this at all, you're like, okay, this is obviously very weird, like, why is this going on? But it seemed like what Dan Schneider did, he was kind of creating an environment where he would constantly push the envelope, and he would constantly normalize this weird stuff. Where you do that more and more and more, and then the weird stuff, you're just like, oh, well, that's just normal. That's just what we do here.
Right. Yeah. And so wait, what was your question?
Yeah. So just how does that happen? Because it's like the metaphor of like, if you put a frog in a boiling pot of water, he'll jump out.
Right.
But if you put it in where he's warm, and then you just slowly increase the temperature, then it gets hot enough where it ends up killing him and he doesn't jump out.
Yeah.
Well, and there's like the whole leadership dynamic when it's the people on top and the people telling you what to do. It's like, who do you go to at that point? Yeah. You can't go to someone who's going to make decisions, because they are the ones making decisions. I feel like people feel trapped.
Yeah, and that's, talking to your parents and stuff, especially, and that's where, so for any students listening or anything, like if there are some things in your life that you're like, this is kind of odd, or if somebody says, like from the outside that comes in, like, hey, why do you, like, this is weird. And so, because unfortunately abuse happens and things like that. And so to my understanding, he didn't necessarily abuse kids or anything, but there was just weird things that he would do that, were, it can be considered abuse as far as like he was normalizing things that were weird.
Yeah. So
like at least exploiting them.
Yeah.
Correct. So that was Dan Schneider, and he kind of played a role in it. But what was kind of the show ended on, at least this part, was so there was a case of someone who was on the team. I think he was like a vocal coach, and he did this other stuff. He got arrested for abusing this teenager for like months at a time.
I mean,
and so the person, and then they like bring the person out of the silhouette, and you see who it is, and it's Drake Bell from Drake and Josh. And so he's like, I've never talked about this publicly, but this was when he was like 14 and 15. So, and as you're kind of going through the story, so how it happened for him is, so his mom and dad were divorced. So he would one weekend go to his mom, one weekend go to his dad's. And his dad originally got him into acting because he wanted something they could do together, and Drake seemed like he really liked it and everything like that. And so he was always very cautious and always keeping an eye on Drake, and wanted to make sure like there was no funny business going on. I think I just had a stroke. So funny business going on. So he kept a very watchful eye on him, and he became very good friends with his vocal coach, Drake did. So, and like you said, because you spend so much time with them, they kind of become family.
Yeah.
But the dad started seeing this guy being kind of weird with Drake. Like he would touch him on the arm, or like he would just, there's a lot of red flags there.
Right.
And he got more into it, and then the vocal coach, I think this is how it happened. The vocal coach got with Drake's mom and basically made the dad out to be a villain. Like, he's just trying to hold you back. Like, your career's never going to excel if you keep letting him do all this stuff. So, and that actually kind of breaks that connection between Drake and his dad, where he's like, look, you're not looking out for my best interest. You just are being selfish, not letting me do all these things. So he ends up staying with his mom most of the time. And then what the mom does is she still wants him to be very involved, Drake to be very involved in the stuff he's doing. And I think she lives a little bit further away. So sometimes when they would have something that is further away, she would actually just send Drake with this vocal coach. Man. And she would go and let him stay at this guy's house and be like, okay, because the guy's like, oh, well, it'd just be easier if just Drake sleeps here and then I'll bring him back in the morning because it's already late and all this kind of stuff. So it became a very routine thing where this guy's like family, Drake's going to stay at his house. And Drake talks about, I don't know if it was the first time he was there. It might have been, but that's where the sexual abuse started, where he was just alone at this guy's house. And that ended up going on for months and months and months. Yeah. And then finally, Drake had a girlfriend, and the girlfriend's mom saw Drake and sensed that there was something weird, and ended up getting out that this guy had done some terrible things to him. Yeah. So that's what started, and that's how the guy got found out. But it was kind of like we were saying, those small things over time that led to it. But then the mom just trusting people that they think are like family. Yeah. And doing these things that we think would be clearly a red flag, and then that's how the abuse actually happened. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that, I mean, I here at our church, we take a child abuse prevention class. Like, I mean, somebody comes in and teaches it, and that's what they say. Like, they normalize behavior that's odd. Yeah, but it's called grooming. Like, it's the small little things. It's like they'll just make a comment and just see how you respond, or they'll say something, and it seems innocent and all that stuff, but it's just. It's so diabolical because it's like this. They've got this plan in place, and sometimes it takes months or even years to like play out their plan. But they've got like these things that they do to make sure they're like, oh yeah, we're family, or like, oh man, your dad is trying to hold you back. Like, just things that they do that you're like, this is so bizarre. But because they've like earned that trust, and they're usually people that are carefree and giving and loving and all that stuff, like, you're like, oh, this person has my best interest and all this stuff.
Yeah, and they're spending a lot of time with them, and those are the people that are in the industry. So, talking to a 14-year-old, you're like, look, I know we can take you to the next level, we can do all these things, but your dad's the one holding us back, so you can kind of drive that stake in between that relationship.
I think stuff like this is coming out more and more, so thankfully I feel like the worldview around this kind of thing is shifting in a better direction, where people feel more empowered to call things out. I actually just watched a clip of, it was like a matinee showing of a Beauty and the Beast play, and it was like all these students, and when Gaston tried to kiss Belle and she pushed him away, like all the kids clapped and like cheered. Whereas like a couple of years ago or growing up, like I would have, I don't know, just not even think about it. But it's like this idea of like, hey, no, like it's not okay for you to do this. And I think it's empowering. Hopefully these things continue to empower kids to speak up, because that's one of the biggest things. This like the kid probably doesn't speak up because they feel such shame.
Yeah. And they use, I mean, again, there's all these tricks and stuff that they use against the kids. Like, oh, this is our secret. Don't tell anybody. You'll ruin your career. Yeah. And so you get to this point where you can't tell anybody because it's gone on or it's happened. And then like, if you tell somebody like, well, I'll get fired. If I get fired, then you won't go anywhere. Like, and they put all this stuff in their head.
This trap that you can't get out of.
Yeah. And so I again, like if something has happened to you or whatever, like you need to get help. Like tell somebody if you have been abused or something. Like talk to a trusted adult and tell somebody until somebody believes you. Like that's the thing. Like I teach a class in schools called Truth Talk, and that's one of the things we talk about abuse and like talk to somebody about it, because it's not going to get better. It's not going to change. This person isn't going to be like, oh, we're done or whatever. It's going to keep happening. And so make sure you talk to somebody about it. But so with these shows though, this is where parents and the worldview stuff matters, because you'll watch these things. If there are these weird situations where it says it like normalizes sexuality amongst kids or whatever, like why, like parents, you need to watch some of these shows that your kids are watching, because even like kid shows now, like I mean the Muppet Babies or whatever that, like
not the Muppet Babies,
not the original good one, but whatever. Like I mean, there's different things now that they're pushing agendas and things like that in the shows where it is normalizing some behaviors that are against a biblical worldview, against the Christ-centered worldview. And so the more that we are informed of what our kids are watching, because there are some shows that are like we've told our kids, hey, you can't watch this, and I mean they're kid shows, but there's agendas and things that are being pushed in those shows are like, this isn't for you at this time. Like maybe later in life you can watch this because you have a better understanding. But
right, and that's what it's like. We don't necessarily want to ban all things so that they're not exposed to it. But at what age? What?
No, I said yes, we do. I was like, not
ban all the things.
But at what age is it? That's kind of what I think is like. At what age is it appropriate to have that conversation?
I think it's different for every kid.
My
kids are all very different. And so, the conversations we're having with Quincy are different than the conversations we're going to have with Sonny at the ages. So, so we need, but it is having those conversations. It's not just, hey, you can't watch this.
Right.
It's like, hey, there's some things in this that we want to talk with you, but we don't think this is the time, and so you need to not watch this.
Now, from a student perspective, because I think this is, because they talk about it in the show a little bit, so there's a girl named Amanda Bynes, and so she got recruited by Dan Schneider when she was probably like 11, and then when she's 16, then they've been together so long, and they've doing all this stuff, and he kind of wants to take her to the next level, and she's spending a lot of time with Dan and stuff like that, and it's a similar thing where her parents are made out to be the enemy, and to the point where she wants to get emancipated, where she wants to no longer be like her parents have that guardianship over her.
Oh, man.
And so I think for students, sometimes, especially as you get close to that 16, 17, 18, you hear what your parents say and you're like, well, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know anything.
Right.
You're just trying to...
You don't know me.
Yeah, you just want me to stay a child forever and I want to grow up.
Or whatever.
Exactly. So what do you... And you hear like your peers or other people you meet in the world, you're almost more likely to trust what they say just because it's not your parents.
Right.
So what do you do? What would you say to those students who maybe your parents are saying one thing, but you think they're outdated and they're old and they don't know what they're talking about?
Well, sorry, I'm going to jump in with the questions to you. Because one of the things that I listened to a podcast of keeping kids in church and like what was the number one determining factor. You might have different research on this, but one of them for this lady talking on her podcast was that her kids had actual trust in relationships with other adults in the church. And so I think it's super important that it's like, if you're not just hearing it from your parents, you might be hearing it from a trusted adult. so that you're not hearing it from just one side and that you've always heard it from.
Yeah. And that's what I mean, because I've had that happen to me, and I've heard stories because like a kid will come home from youth group and be like, oh man, I can't believe the youth pastor said this, and the parents are like, I've been saying that for years.
Right.
Why did you listen to me? But so yeah, the trusted adult thing, and then I think asking yourself the question, what do my parents have to gain, or what does this person that's telling me this have to gain from this conversation? Because a lot of times when there's tough conversations, the person that's telling you this truth that they want you to hear, I put truth in quotes, but it is the truth. You think it's not true or whatever, but it's like, what do they have to gain by this? It's like, okay, your mom doesn't like your boyfriend, or doesn't like this friend group that you're hanging out with, or your dad's telling you these things. Like, what do they have to gain by that conversation? Like, oh, they want to fight you. That's why they're having this conversation. No, like there's something that they see that you don't have a perspective on. And so I think when anytime anybody has a tough conversation with me, I'm like, okay, I can dismiss it and be like, well, they just don't like me, or they're jealous of me, or whatever, or they just wish they had a relationship like this, or whatever. But what do they have to gain by that conversation? And if I can truly answer like, oh, well, they hate me and they're wanting to ruin my life, okay, probably not. Like, they're probably having that conversation because they're able to have perspective that I don't have. And then that's when I can like seek out another trusted adult or a friend and be like, hey, this was said to me. Do you think this is true? Because sometimes your friends won't always tell you that stuff. But if you ask them, like, oh, yeah, we all seen this. Like, well, why didn't you tell me?
Everyone knows except you.
Right. And so sometimes if you just bring it out and say, hey, this was said to me. What do you think about this? And say it with unbiased, like, my mom said this, and I can't believe it. But if you're like able to have like a real conversation about it, I think you start to see that. And then, yeah, you need those trusted adults that are going to help you in that as well. Like saying, hey, yeah, they're right. And
it's true. So listen to your parents, or if not, find another trusted adult. Yes, Adrian, go.
What were you gonna? No, I was gonna segue to the next thing.
Okay, no. So it reminds me of like Solomon's son, Rehoboam, I think. Yeah,
Rambo. I love those movies.
Where he like consulted this group of wise men that were his dad's advisors, and they gave him good advice. And then he's like, "Well, let me check with my friends." And his friends are like, "No, don't do that. That's stupid." And so he went with his friends, and like it ruined a lot of things. And so you need those trusted adults that have wisdom that can kind of see from different perspectives than you can, and your friends. But sometimes you have wise friends.
It's so hard when you're a kid.
Oh,
like I still remember like those thoughts and those struggles of like thinking that I knew better or my friends knew better.
Yeah.
And now being an adult, I'm like, oh gosh, what? You don't learn it until you experience it, I guess.
I knew better.
You knew better. Well, I think for parents, it can be helpful too, because I mean, sometimes the wisdom you have is based on the mistakes that you've made. Mm-hmm. But if you don't share, hey, I did that when I was your age and this is what happened. If you never share that, then they don't know the why behind it.
Right.
So they just feel like you're just saying do it because I said so.
Right.
Yeah, that's another thing for parents. Like, have the conversation of why, because I know some people that like oh, you can't watch the show.
Why?
Yeah.
I just have a feeling about it. It's bad. And like, what? Well,
I've heard that too.
That doesn't give me any perspective. But sometimes it is like, okay, I just had a prompting from the Holy Spirit. Like, there's something not right in this, and like, I can't tell you what it is, but there's something like.
Yeah.
But you have to do that few and far between instead of, or sit down and watch an episode with them and be like, hey, like talk about that worldview and all that stuff. So you have your transition?
I do. Well, we led with the sacrifice of doing nothing.
Yeah.
And that actually really resonates with what you were talking about, Jimmy, with the show is the thought process of if I tell someone, then I'm going to sacrifice my career.
Yeah.
But it's like, what are you sacrificing by not?
Oh.
So
that's good.
The price of inaction, I've heard it said.
Yes. So that's what brings me to my book that I just read. It is called The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea.
Oh.
I cannot remember the author.
Jane Goodall.
No. But it's
Tolkien.
Korean. It's like a Korean mythology. So there's lots of gods and goddesses and like that kind of myth.
I don't approve.
Well, so that's like there's two discussions here.
Yeah, okay.
One is the worldview of the book itself, but two is like what's maybe our collective worldview on gods and goddesses and things, because that's a topic that's starting to come up in my house. Oh. Because Amos got this giant snake from the zoo. He's always wanted like one of those big like snakes, stuffed animals.
He painted it in gold and put it on a staff.
Well, he started calling it the snake god. And so,
oh man, my kid bows to the gems.
Does he?
He's like, I found these gems and I bow to them.
To the gems.
No. Anyway, Shepherd, he's crazy.
He's funny.
So anyway, this is the quote. So this is like what happens at the beginning. So it's not. This is not spoilers.
Spoiler.
I would say it's a really fun book. I would actually recommend it. There's no bad content or anything like that, but
except gods and goddesses.
Is that bad content though?
No, I know. Yeah,
that's what we need to talk about in a minute if we want to go that way.
Yeah, let's do it.
But anyway, the main character. The point is that there's this village that every year gets like just ransacked by these really terrible storms that come from the sea, and they believe that this sea god collects they needs a sacrifice, needs a bride every year. And so they send one girl out into the sea, and there's a literal dragon that comes and like takes her. So it isn't like a.
This is what the movie Damsel's based on.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it sounds like.
It does sound like that.
We talked about this last week. Check out last week's episode.
So it's not like they think that they should, and then they find out it's not true. It is actually true that this dragon, and then the storms kind of calmed down for a while. Until the next year. So this girl sneaks onto the boat where where the sacrifice girl is going out. She sneaks, and then
I volunteer as tribute.
Yeah, she jumps in her place.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's Hunger Games.
She's the Jesus.
So this is kind of towards the end of the book. She's like kind of wrapping up her thoughts, but she says, "It's true that people do the most desperate things for those that they love. Some might even call it sacrifice. Maybe that's what people believed when I jumped into the sea in her place. But I think it might be the other way around. I think it would have been a terrible sacrifice to do nothing." So she felt like she could solve this curse and wanted to try.
Yeah.
And so she took that girl's place, but it wasn't necessarily, but she did it for those that she loved, but it wasn't, her motivation wasn't solely like, I'm going to sacrifice myself for this girl.
Interesting.
It was, I'm going to sacrifice myself for the people. And if I do nothing, it's a greater sacrifice.
Because you have to live with yourself. You're like, oh man, I could have done something to help the situation or stop the situation or do something better, and I did nothing. And so,
but I think it can come into like an everyday conversation too.
Yeah.
Of like, we were gonna dye Easter eggs, and Amos goes, "I'm not doing that." And we said, "Why? This is like super fun, and we only do it once a year. All this kind of stuff."
We usually do it at our house, but
exactly.
we had 6 kids this year.
Yeah. So why not? And he goes, "Well, last year I dropped one of my eggs and it cracked." And so now I don't want to do that again.
I can't go through that again, man.
And it was like,
it changed me.
Okay, so you're going to sacrifice. I know it's simple, but it is the worldview of like, I'm going to give up having fun, doing something artistic, whatever, doing something with my family because something bad might happen. But I think this comes out in so many ways and changes as we get older of, I'm not going to do this because something bad might happen, and kind of giving up. It's like, okay, I'm giving up something. I'm giving up the hurt of losing an egg or whatever, but I'm also like, I'm giving up a greater thing by not participating in it.
Yeah.
It's better to have loved and lost than never loved at all.
Oh, gosh.
So I was looking up James 2. Sorry, I wasn't just scrolling on my phone. James chapter 2, if a brother or sister is without clothes and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, stay warm and be well fed, but you don't give them what the body needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith, if it does not have works, is dead by itself. And so I think that goes along with the sacrifice thing, because it really cost me nothing to be like, hey, I hope you get better. I hope you get fed, homeless person. Like, and I don't do anything about it. I'm really not sacrificing anything. I'm not doing anything to help the cause or anything like that. But
you're not sacrificing something yourself, but what what are you sacrificing? Like in the bigger picture.
Well, and especially if I'm claiming Christ as the Lord of my life, and then I say, "Oh, I hope you fix whatever problem you need," and I've got the means to help you, but I'm not going to. I'm sacrificing Jesus to that person. I feel like I'm not.
You're giving up the ability to share Jesus with somebody.
Yeah, because I'm not doing anything about their situation except just giving them more empty words that mean nothing. Right. And so, so what ended up happening? Did he dye eggs? He did,
and you know what?
He dropped one.
His favorite one.
Oh.
Seriously, and it cracked and everything.
He said never again.
Goes, why does this always happen to me? Crisis of faith right there.
Oh my goodness.
But you know what? He was like, in a year, especially for a 5 to 6 year old, he's matured. So he realized he didn't care as much.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's a thing.
Oh, okay, whatever. I just cracked my egg.
It's like you're saying, it does apply to so many different areas of our life. Because, I mean, one way of looking at it is I'm not going to try to do something because I could fail. And I think a lot of people do that because they're so afraid of failure, then they never even try. Or like I've heard of people that say, well, I'm not going to have kids because this is a crazy world and I don't want bad things to happen to them. Right. So I'm not going to go and have this probably very cool experience because something bad could happen. Because if you're always looking at,
fear of failure.
Yeah. If you're always looking at, if there's a chance I'm going to fail or a chance I'm going to be bad, I'm never going to do it, then that's a very restrictive way to live your life.
Because you can always come up with scenarios of how this is going to mess up and fail.
Yeah, and you're giving up a lot more in turn.
Yeah, you're sacrificing. So I want to get to the gods and goddesses thing, but is there anything we can wrap up this part of the discussion with? So what? Yeah. So how do you overcome that? I guess how do you judge a situation? Because I think there are times where you're like, oh, I could do this and help in the situation, but then it may not be for the best interest. Okay. Yeah. So we talked about toxic charity or whatever. It's like, oh, I could do something to help the situation, but it actually might not help the situation as much as I think it's going to.
Yeah.
Well, that's just finding ways that really will help.
Yeah. We need to do that.
Yeah. Well, and so to your question, how do you kind of overcome that? So in my head, it's kind of you let the scenario play out. So another thing that comes to my head when you think the price of inaction. So it's like if you're talking about like managing your money. Yeah. So that could be something where you're like, well, that just seems super restrictive. I don't want to do it now. So it's like, I'm just going to do nothing. And that's not going to do anything for you now. Like that's not going to be a problem, but down the line, you're going to pay for that in the future. So you can either pay for it with action up front, or you can pay for that inaction down the line because you didn't do anything about it.
So this goes back, I don't know what episode it was, but you talked about the old people thing where you're like, you talk to yourself as an 80-year-old man.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you look back at that point in your life, you're like, okay, what result happened because I did this thing or I didn't do this thing? And so like, what would your 80-year-old self say about that situation? So
it's the Solomon paradox.
The Solomon paradox. That's it. So
because we give better advice than we take. So if we can get advice from our 80-year-old self, then it's so much better.
It's so true.
Yeah, so just play it out. So, I mean, what would happen if I did do this? What would be the result years from now? And what would be the result if I didn't do anything right now? And play it out and see which one are you more comfortable with.
Lately, it's been giving my advice to like Amos.
Yeah.
And it's like when he messes up or does something, or when he doesn't, the biggest hypocritical thing is when he doesn't put stuff away or put his plate in the dishwasher or whatever. And then I look around and it's like my mugs are all over the house.
Yes.
I saw my clothes are strewn everywhere. And I'm like, well, I just expect way more of him than I do myself.
Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, I saw this on TikTok. It's like, I don't know why parents are she's like, I'm not going to say my kid can never have sugar. Because, I mean, we have them on such a restrictive diet and everything. But, like, I'm not that disciplined. Like, I'm going to eat the cookies. I'm going to do this. But I shouldn't especially them being 5 years old, we shouldn't expect them to be these upstanding citizens that have ultimate self-discipline.
Right.
Well, and I don't know if this was staged or not, but have you seen that girl there in line at Starbucks, and she's like, the mom's ordering in the car, and she orders her coffee, and the girl's like, hey, and I want some cookies. And she goes, we got cookies at home. And the girl goes, we got coffee at home. She's like, and some cookies. Then she orders it.
That's a good point.
But the kid's like 4 or 5, but I feel like it feels staged, but it was still pretty funny.
Because you kind of want your kids to live up to your ideals, but you don't live up to your ideals.
Right.
Yes. So how do we
Give
get
them
on
a
that? I don't know how we got on that. But okay, so real quick on the gods and goddesses thing, like what do you like?
So that's coming up now.
The snake god.
Like the snake god. And well, like Amos likes me to tell him stories at night before we go to bed, and so usually I'll just tell him what I'm reading, and so I started telling him this.
We're in
book.
Judges today. This lady's getting cut up into 12 pieces. That's a terrible story.
No, like what fiction book I'm reading. So I started telling him this, and he was like, a sea god, like. And he just couldn't and so I started wrestling with this myself of like, okay, what do I actually believe? Because a lot of cultures believe in different gods and goddesses, and like I can't just shelter him from this whole realm of, especially because I love like K-dramas and stuff so much, and they've got some like even Last Airbender has this like
the spirit world,
great fantasy and great storytelling, and it comes with these gods and goddesses. But actually where the conversation came up more was we were reading Prince Caspian. Oh. And that's as Christian as you can get for children's literature.
Lewis. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's like, I think his name is Bacchus. He's the god of wine.
Oh,
and
Bacchus.
Like Aslan invites him to this party, and
box of wine.
And Amos was like crying, laughing, because it's like this big fat man came on a donkey and was yelling refreshments, and like throwing grapes to everybody. And Amos thought that was the funniest thing. But I'm like, well, he's the god of wine. Like, what are we doing here? C.S. Lewis, come on,
Clive Staples.
Come on.
But even he believed in like.
The wine god.
Yeah. No, it's just like these things of myth.
Yeah.
Are they truly myth? Like, did they come from, or are they, like, I think some Christians would push it as far as to say, like, they're actually demons, demon realm, like showing up in the form, and people would refer to them as gods, or like lesser.
Because Percy Jackson, I mean, we watched the first episode with our kids. We'll watch more. We're not against it, but but I mean, Percy Jackson is the Greek gods.
Spoiler alert.
Greek or
sure.
Yeah, they're Greek.
Okay, the Greek gods. Greek or Roman, but the Greek gods.
Greek.
And so. And this kid is half Greek god and all this stuff. That is a spoiler, but you find out early on. But so the whole premise, is like those gods are real, and they're like there's this battle that goes on that we don't see. It's in this other realm, the spirit realm. But they actually affect us and all that stuff still on a daily basis. So I think. Yeah, just letting them know, like, hey, these are fictional things. These aren't real,
or are they?
But
that's what Adrian's asking.
Well, no, I mean, we're not going to discuss if they're real or not. Are they? But like in C.S. Lewis and I keep wanting to say, Prince Caspian, they even like Lucy and Susan talk about the Bacchus. I think is it Bacchus?
Sure.
Bacchus?
I don't know.
Let us know in the comments.
They talk about it later, and they say, I don't think I should have liked to run into him without Aslan there. And it's like the presence of Aslan, even those lesser gods acknowledge that he is a true god. He is the true God.
Sure.
Or in that world.
Well, there's that story in the Old Testament where they have the Ark of the Covenant? In this, like another nation has stolen it. Oh, yeah. And every time they come back in, their gods have fallen over. Like their false gods have fallen and they're bowing to the ark.
Yeah. So it's like, regardless of if these are real or not, they still have to acknowledge that there is a true God that they serve, that they will eventually bow to and serve.
Yeah, I don't think they're real. I mean, unless they're demons acting as these entities.
That's what I mean. Like,
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Because you can't deny that people run into spiritual realm things and they think it's either a god or a goddess or whatever, and there's some sort of stronghold there.
Although I think a lot of times you've heard the god of the gaps, where in ancient times there's different phenomenons that happen in life, and people came to the conclusion, well, that must be the god of the sun or the god of corn and all these different things. So they just made up these gods in their head to explain the things that they saw around them because they didn't know how it actually happened.
Right.
So the god of the gaps, the god of the old navies.
I don't know what that's
like. Gap, Old Navy.
Like,
he was trying to make that
that's
joke.
an old mall joke.
Old mall. Jimmy wasn't born yet when malls existed.
Yeah, jeez.
He's like, what's a mall? But do you think there's levels of angels? Because there's supposedly Lucifer was the
if
choir.
God is given authority to different things, and the thing is like these gods throughout history and literature and all that, they require sacrifices.
Yeah.
And they usually require
Meddling.
blood sacrifices or children, these horrific things. But then you take a look at our God.
But didn't he require a sacrifice?
He sacrificed himself,
but he still required one.
Yeah, but he's saying but he provided it himself. He's not saying you give me a sacrifice
unless you don't believe in Jesus. Then you have
providing.
Yes.
Then you have to sacrifice yourself.
The sacrifice, Isaac and his, not Isaac, Abraham and Isaac.
Yeah.
Like a ram in the thicket.
Even that was normal back then because people were sacrificing their children to other gods.
Yeah.
So he was saying okay, well, my God is also provided or is requiring this of me.
God wants me to kill my son too.
And God is saying, no, actually, I'm going to provide the sacrifice.
Totally. And because because you said kind of flippantly that I'm supposed to kill my son, but they believed that in that culture.
Totally.
There was a child sacrifice that they would kill their baby.
Well, yeah. So God was showing how this God was different.
Yeah.
How he would provide the sacrifice.
So that's where I think you can take these gods and goddesses and say, okay, that's what the world says about who gods are and goddesses and things like that, but here's who the true God is, and point them back to scripture of this is how God is different, and this is why we worship God and things like that. And so a good resource for this is so the next generation may know by.
I thought it was so the next generation will know.
So the next generation will know.
You said may.
Will know. Sean McDowell. But it's, and in that book, they talk about how do you talk to your kids about different worldview stuff, because he said there were things that they would do as a family. He's like, my kids wanted to watch this show, but I knew there were some things that were against biblical sexuality and stuff like that, and so they would have a conversation afterward. And he would say, you can watch this, but we're going to have a conversation about it afterward. And will you still do that? And they're like, okay, yeah. So, and then he's like, sometimes during a movie they would pause it. And he's like, did you guys just hear what he said? And he's like, I wouldn't do that too often, but he's like, God, turn it back on. But he's like, wait, I want you guys to hear what they said. And how does that line up? And he said they would always try to look for good things in it first. And then he's like, and I would just ask questions. He's like, I wouldn't preach or whatever, because they're like, oh, Dad's doing this again. Yeah. So he's like, he had to learn how to ask good questions. But that's what we want you to do. We want you to, if you're a parent, to instill that in your kids. Hey, ask questions about this. Learn what you're taking in and why and what it says about.
And that's the thing is it's okay. It's a part of something I think we've lost is the idea of adults can learn and teach their children while they're learning. Yeah. And bring them along with you. Yeah. So when we were reading Prince Caspian and Amos started asking about gods, and then I started reading this book and telling him about it, then he had, it was all the questions open. And I was like, honestly, I don't really know what I think about this. I just have always just kind of dismissed it in my mind of I know what's true and this isn't, and that's fine. But now I have to explore why? Like, why?
Well, so what has been helpful for me is, because in apologetics, which is kind of defending the faith, is first they try to prove the existence of God, and they do that with a number of ways. But then the question is, well, all these religions believe in God or gods, so how do you know which religion is true? So, and what they hinge that argument on is the resurrection of Jesus, just came from Easter. So the resurrection of Jesus and the historical evidence that this was an actual real event. So if Jesus actually resurrected from the dead and God declared him, he was the Son of God, then that, if that is proven and that is true, then that is a claim that you can say, because of that, Christianity is true compared to all these other religions. So that is what Christianity kind of hinges on.
Wow. So that book again was
The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea.
So would you recommend? You said
it was like fun and interesting, and
all right,
just kind of a classic YA novel.
Check it out,
young adults.
And speaking of things that have fallen beneath the sea, it's time for Forward Foibles. That's so loud in our ears. All right, this week it's again, it's a little bit more serious. It's weird, but there are groups of fish in Florida, like not just one species,
schools.
But like I don't know if it's whole school, but there's like
multiple species of fish
that have been found just swimming in tight circles down until they die.
Oh,
and they don't know why this is happening. They're like, is there something in the water? But it's from like the Florida Keys to Miami.
Oh my goodness.
That was not a planned joke.
We wrote that in before we started. And Adrian was saying, that sounds fishy.
Laugh.
Everyone laugh, please. So there are these fish that they're trying to like test the water and figure out like, okay, what is happening and why is it? It's like a big stretch, and there's these sawtooth fish. They're apparently a endangered species that it's affecting several of them. They can be like 12 feet long. So they're just washing up on the shore. And they're like, what? Why are these fish washing up on the shore?
Wouldn't that be scary to see, like, if you're swimming, you just see this saw fish, like,
just in a circle?
I'm imagining, like, the hammerhead or whatever, where it's like, don't they have, like, the long snout with the teeth? And you're just seeing it, like, chop, chop, chop.
I would be concerned. It's a little water tornado.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys see that fish? I saw it. So,
what?
Oh, sawfish.
Sawfish. Sorry.
It took me a second, too. It wasn't a good joke.
This is a terrible joke.
This is a bad joke day for all of us.
So all these fish are dying and like washing up on the shore, and they've figured out that there's fish swimming in circles. They're trying to figure out like why it's not just one species, and like is there stuff in them? They're trying to like get them out of the water that are swimming to see if they keep doing it in different types of water, and like they don't know. And so
they don't know.
In times.
Well, because what was the movie where
the eclipse is coming? Maybe that's why.
Sure, maybe where it snowed real much. The Day After Tomorrow.
The Polar Express.
Real much.
the Day After Tomorrow?
Yeah.
I'm sure it was the Polar Express.
Why don't you guys shut up? Sorry.
Jeez, Chris. Look.
Yeah, goodness sakes.
Outrageous.
When I do that, Sonny always is like, why did you beat me? Is Adrian saying bad words?
It's always Adrian.
We said it, yeah.
And Adrian is a swearer.
So anyways, they... yeah, but like in that movie, I think it's that movie where like all these birds start doing weird things, like flying into buildings, and there's like all these patterns that are off. And you're like, something big is coming. So animals always know ahead of time because they'll be like,
Florida is just a breeding ground of conspiracies.
Yeah, but they're telling us something's about to happen. We know the eclipse is coming, so we'll see. Yeah, by the time next week we record this, the world might not be here anymore.
That's true. So make sure you like and subscribe before the world ends.
Please like and subscribe. So. Okay, but we're not going to have time for
let's skip. So preview for next week, we're going to talk about some Wikipedia things.
Some wiki games. Okay. We're going to show a clip here.
Okay, Jimmy and I are going to blind react. So.
Blind react, let's see how it goes.
If you're a listener, they'll be able to hear it, right?
In theory.
Because it's, hopefully, yeah. So, but it's, I mean, if you are listening, there's really nothing except a shopping cart on the screen. So we're going to talk about how shopping carts may determine your worldview. And so
let's watch it. Hey, look, you can hear it.
The shopping cart is the ultimate litmus test for whether a person is capable of self-governing. To return the shopping cart is an easy, convenient task, and one which we all recognize as the correct, appropriate thing to do. To return the shopping cart is objectively right. There are no situations other than dire emergencies in which a person is not able to return their cart. Simultaneously, it is not illegal to abandon your shopping cart. Therefore, the shopping cart presents itself as the apex example of whether a person will do what is right without being forced to do it. No one will punish you for not returning the shopping cart. No one will fine you or kill you for not returning the shopping cart. You gain nothing by returning the shopping cart. You must return the shopping cart out of the goodness of your own heart. You must return the shopping cart because it is the right thing to do, because it is correct. A person who is unable to do this is no better than an animal.
Wow.
An absolute savage who can only be made to do what is right by threatening them with a law and the force that stands behind it. The shopping cart is what determines whether a person is a good or bad member of society.
His voice.
I know, and the shopping cart rolling in the background. How do I stop this? Okay, there you go.
An absolute savage.
An absolute savage.
Just that alone will now determine whether I return a shopping cart.
I disagree with it completely.
All right, why?
Because we don't return a shopping cart because it's the right thing to do. It's part social proof and part social norm, social pressure. Because I went to a Walmart in South Carolina, and this was a Walmart. There's a lot of palm trees in South Carolina, which I didn't know. I guess it's close to the coast. But so this Walmart, because they have all the shopping cart corrals, and no one used them. There were shopping carts all throughout the parking lot. I still don't know why. Maybe they were
walked in the store. I demand to know why you guys are savages.
Well, so maybe it was because they were further away, or I don't remember the exact reason, but I remember no one used one.
Yeah,
and because of that, I didn't either. Because there was no social pressure. There was no the social norm thing was to not return it to the cart corral. But for most Walmarts,
what did you sacrifice by not returning that shopping cart?
What did I sacrifice?
Your morality. You're an animal.
Absolutely not. Because
you are a savage.
Humanity.
Because
you sacrificed your entire humanity.
No. So it wasn't a part of there was no social pressure, no social convention. That wasn't the social norm. So I did not do it because the social norm in that environment was to not return it.
Yeah, I say the only reason I return a shopping cart is I think this person next to me who's walking by is going to judge me.
That's true. There is one more danger, and you can say your thing, but there's another danger of not returning your cart.
What?
Your car gets hit.
Cart narcs.
Oh yeah, so there are So here's what
I thought you were going to get into that.
Yeah, so cart narcs, the channel, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so this guy will come up and just kind of harass people. They're like, "Hey, why don't you take your cart back? You can walk fine." And they're like, "What?" And then he's like, when you do this, it damages the cart, it damages the store, then we have to raise prices. Why didn't you take your cart back? And didn't he put a bumper sticker?
Yeah, so he's got these magnets that he'll throw and it'll stick to the car. It says lazy bones on it.
That's amazing.
And people get out of their car are so angry and chase him and are cussing him out and doing all these things. And
he goes, "Hey, you can run that far, just take your cart."
You just sacrificed all this time, energy, effort because you didn't return.
But they're enraged, and they usually come up with some excuse of why they didn't. But they
get out of the car and chase him. He's like, "You could have taken your cart back." Yeah. So there's cart narcs. There's a comedian talking about Costco, and he's like, I never understand how there's just shopping carts not in the cart corral. At Costco.
No, they are few and far between at Costco.
Is it because the parking lots are so big?
Yeah, but
it's harder at Costco to return.
He's like, I just walked 2.5 miles in that store. I can't walk another couple feet to put my cart back. You're like
well,
it's so
Aldi just solved the problem.
Oh yes,
with the quarter.
Okay, so did they? But they don't have cart corrals. They have one at the front where you pay a quarter.
Yeah. So they solved the problem of just that whole idea.
Yeah, they solved it. So they don't leave it up to chance. Because
leave it up to change.
Leave it up to change. They don't. They do leave it up to change. So, but to get a cart to go in the store, you have to pay a quarter, and it's again the social norm, social pressure. But then you also want your quarter back.
You get it back at the end.
Exactly.
And it's just a quarter.
So, when I heard that, I was like, this is dumb. And then the more I listened to it, I was like, this is actually an interesting discussion because So social pressure.
Yeah.
But does that, like, even if there wasn't, because
I think you could make that argument if there's no one else around.
Yeah. So, like, I've heard this thing where guys, they will only wash their hands in the bathroom if there's someone else in the bathroom. Like if there's like a public bathroom.
Okay.
You guys are sickos.
And they feel that social pressure if there's someone else in there, but if there's not, then they won't. So, but there is a quote that says, how you do anything is how you do everything. So I do think it's a thing where, like, this guy said that when he's hiring some business executive, he'll bring him out to golf with them. And if the guy that they're interviewing or whatever cheats in some way or he wrongs someone, then he's like, I'm not going to go into business with this guy, because if that's just kind of his moral character in the small things, then that can very likely translate over into the big things as well.
I think it was Henry Ford. I heard something about where he invited these two guys to lunch that he was going to hire or whatever.
Yeah.
And one like put salt on his food and like was kind of rude to the waiter or waitress. Like there's just some things. And then when they left, he's like, okay, I'm hiring you and not hiring you. And the guy's like, what? Like we just had lunch. Like you didn't interview me or anything like that. And he's like, well, you put salt on your food before you even tasted it. And so it shows you're going to do things like without testing things and without actually thinking through things. And the way you talk to this person, like you see them as an inferior person. And so the employees that work under you, you're going to treat that way. And so, so you can learn a lot about somebody, but if somebody doesn't put their shopping cart back, like, do you judge them? Do you look at them, like if you watch somebody take their cart and just kind of put it in the parking lot spot next to them? So have you ever done,
But I've done it.
So have there been times where like wherever you park, there's a cart next to you or whatever.
Yeah, and then I just join my cart with theirs.
And they're like, well, there's already one here.
That's true.
Yeah. Now there could be two. Do you think, like, I wonder who invented the cart corral, because they're like, well, people aren't walking all the way back up.
I think it was Henry Ford.
Made a space for them to do this. But yeah, so I think.
Do you think it's more a question of like morality, or is it a question of laziness?
It could be both.
Well, that's what he said.
Have you heard
it's the right thing to do
in relationships? Have you heard of the orange test or the orange peel test?
Is that where the girl leaves the orange peel on the counter and sees what their boyfriend does? Or
no, so this is, and I heard about this semi recently, is if you are in a relationship with like your girlfriend or whatever, ask them if they will peel an orange for you, if they'll peel your orange. And if they don't do it, like this, because I mean, the response you might get is, why would I do that? You can do it yourself. Like, I'm not going to peel your orange. You're very capable of doing that. But if they don't do it, then that shows, I don't know what the conclusion is, that they don't really love you or something. But if they don't do that small thing that you could do for yourself, then that shows their character.
So their character is shown by you not doing something you could do for yourself.
Yeah. So if my girlfriend denies to peel my orange for me, then she doesn't really care about me. Or boyfriend, vice versa.
If they don't peel it.
Yeah. So
if they do peel it, it shows that they love you.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know about that. But
yeah, that seems kind of risky. Because there's a lot of things that I tell my husband, like, no, do it yourself.
Yeah. But so back to the shopping cart thing. If I don't put it back, but I feel like, okay, this is something I could have done. And that's what he says in the thing. He's like you do it because it's the right thing to do. It's a good thing to do because you're helping out the store, you're helping out other people and all that stuff. If you don't do it, you're a savage. But you are, it's like you're thinking about yourself. And so in some ways, I think it does kind of like it is affected by your worldview. Like if your worldview is, I'm here to help other people because I don't want to ding somebody else's car. I don't want somebody to be inconvenienced by me. I don't want other people to think poorly of me.
Yeah.
And so is it out of societal norms? Maybe.
Yeah.
But I do it because I follow Christ. No, I don't want to say that.
Again, pushing back to that. So if you went to the same Walmart that I did, and now that I'm remembering this, similar to the thing, you like saw another cart and you would push a couple together. So there might be 3 here, 4 there, whatever, but no one was really using the cart corral. So if you saw that was the norm of the environment, would you take it to the cart corral or would you put it in one of the other?
Where the other carts are?
Yeah.
I think that goes back to convenience. Like whichever one was closer.
Yeah.
because I'm like, oh, they're already here. So
I think in a lot of situations, the environment dictates the way that we behave. So like the reason we face forward on the elevator is partially because that's the social norm. Yeah. But if everyone was facing the other way, because they did this on a cruise ship where they were all facing the other way when they were going up on an elevator, and people that got in, a lot of them would turn and just start facing that way just because that was the normal behavior of the environment.
So they would face the wrong way even though...
Yeah.
Because everybody else was, And I mean, they've done research on that and all that stuff there is.
But that's not a moral thing. We just do it because that's the societal norm.
Yeah, but is putting back a grocery cart a moral thing?
I don't think so.
Because it can damage society.
So can a lot of things.
It can damage somebody. Well, but facing an elevator doesn't.
Could.
No,
I don't know.
Give me an example. No, but because it could hit somebody's car.
Sure.
It could.
I don't think the thing is I don't necessarily think people think that deeply about it. But now that we're talking about it, I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that.
Every time I
but now I'm gonna always return my cart after this conversation.
Do you want to read through my friend's text?
Oh my goodness! Because you said they were very heated. So do you remember without reading the whole thing? Do you remember what their points of?
Yeah, what were like some of the points?
But, it's all about societal norms and things like that. Of like, okay, is this?
Well, and that goes to the question of is morality? Is there a objective morality, or is it all societally based?
Well, so
is there something like even when I say like I never thought of that? Does that say something about me? Like that I'm not thoughtful?
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah, I think it does too.
I think it says something about, but like you wouldn't go put all you wouldn't be at that Walmart in South Carolina and be like, I'm going to put all these carts back. But you put.
And that's the thing is like no one. It's almost like what's built into you because no one has ever come out and made like that thing was saying there's no law, there's no rules. But
if there was a law against it, people would. Because it says those that would only follow because there's a law and punishment if you don't do it. Yeah. It's in. I mean, my friends texted so much stuff. But one of the guys, he said, I once drove one of the motorized wheelchair carts back inside for an old woman. It was humiliating, and I'm still not a good person. But
that's the ultimate test is if somebody's walking their car back and you say, I'll take that for you.
Yeah. Or if you're at Aldi, you swap people out that are coming in so you don't have to put the cart back yourself.
And you basically gave them a quarter and a cart.
Although sometimes they'll give you the quarter.
Yeah.
We don't get Aldi
I love
anymore.
Aldi.
# not a sponsor.
So I did ask about Aldi. I said, what about Aldi? And they're like, Aldi clearly displays to us the example of sacrificial submissions in order to maintain preservational order. That's their long game. The grand scheme message they have is mined by borrowing our quarter.
Oh my goodness.
It's a part of the greatest story to keep you down.
The Worldview. Let's write a book called The Worldview of Aldi.
Aldi is a federal psyop to pacify the general population. Therefore, I'm going to pluck chickens for philosophers and live in a barrel overturned into Aldi's parking lot.
Oh,
this is a direct quote. That's concerning.
That is. You need to change friends.
My friends are great. That's why I sent them that. They had like a great debate about it. So I think with that though, because it is something that you can do or not do, and besides those cart guys, whatever, showing up, there's not a consequence. There's not. I mean, but
there is an eternal consequence.
You're going to hell.
Yeah. So, whoa.
If you're not.
So
it's in the Bible. It's okay.
But I find it fascinating that Jimmy saw other carts and not in the cart crowd. And he's like, okay, I'm just going to do it. So So you go with the flow, even though you know what the right thing to do is.
Well, so here's the thing. Ooh. In some situations, there is a norm, and you might not know the reason why, but we often follow the norms because we assume there is a reason why. So maybe there's a reason why But
so you should always search for the truth. Well, so
here's the thing. So if you this is a great example. If you're in traffic and you see there's 2 lanes and you see everyone getting in the right lane, but you look ahead and you don't see anything, do you also get in the right lane since everyone else is doing
That's not a matter of bad and good.
No. But it's. Do I do something because everyone else is doing it, or do I have to know the reason why I'm doing it?
It's circumstantial.
But if everyone's doing this, I'm like, oh, I see everyone else is doing that, so there must be a reason why, so I'm going to do that as well.
So you automatically assume there's a reason why nobody's putting their car back in the car corral.
If you see everyone get in the right lane, do you think there's a reason why they're doing that?
Yeah, because there usually is.
But yeah, if there was that one cart in the cart corral. So I'm like, if everyone's doing this, there's a reason why.
Well, maybe the employees had just cleaned up all the carts in the cart corral, and
Left
the other ones they were coming back to get those other ones. But
Maybe.
you got there right when everything had been cleaned up, and then you put one out there, and those employees were like, why is that guy a jerk? Oh, if he's from Indiana, I saw his license plate.
That's true.
That explains. Now you've given Indiana a bad name. Sorry, South Carolina.
Hey, so the
Jimmy,
environment.
What did you sacrifice
The
by
environment
doing
You
dictates-
sacrificed the good name of Indiana.
Listen, the environment largely dictates your behavior.
We got really far off.
Yeah, the environment. So yes,
The environment largely
But-
dictates your behavior.
what should dictate your behavior more? The Word of God. No.
But what does dictate your behavior more? We can talk about should, but what does dictate your behavior more?
Yeah. So, but you okay.
Especially in the
Should
gray
live
area.
by
But
the
listen,
shoulds.
What does the Bible say about putting your shopping cart back?
It says,
it.
"Do unto others as you would have them do to you."
And what does that
So
mean?
if you owned a grocery store, you would want people to put the carts back in the cart rack.
Okay.
Because you
Cart
want
corral.
the cart corral, whatever it's called. Old cart corral.
Golden corral.
The lunch. So you would want them to do that because one, it keeps costs down.
Sure.
It also doesn't damage your other customers' cars. There's not lawsuits like, oh, this happened, and you have to put up those signs that say we're not responsible if cart rolls in your car, all that stuff. So there are certain things that there are benefits, good benefits for you putting your cart back.
Sure.
And there are bad things that could happen, not always, if you don't put your cart back.
Yeah.
So you know that because you've been to multiple stores over multiple states.
Okay.
And you know what the right thing to do is to put that
Quote
cart.
unquote right thing to do.
No, it's the right thing.
Not objectively.
Yeah, it is.
Again,
We
it's
just said
circumstantial.
there are negative consequences
There can be, yeah.
that could happen as a result of you not putting your cart away. There's also what people think of you as a person.
Yeah.
And so you could get a negative.
Get a negative rap on Indiana, as you said.
Old Jimmy, the old non-cart returner. So, but yeah, so
Lazy bones.
Lazy bones.
Why didn't you put your cart back? Look at all these other carts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you're saying like, even though you know what the right thing to do in that situation is, you chose not to do it because other people did the wrong thing.
Well, I think there are, because again, I don't think a lot of people think about this deeply. There are, I understand that. There's a lot of things where
understand that now.
it seems you have this moral gray area. So then, and you're not thinking, well, what does the Bible say about getting in the right lane if everyone else is getting in the right lane? So these things that you don't think are moral at all because you're not thinking about them, you do it because that's what everyone else is doing.
Yes. But if there's
the car lane thing and the
Shopping cart.
carts
Sure.
are totally unrelated.
Totally, it was to, yeah.
but to say like a bunch of people are doing one thing and so he's going to do it.
Yeah, but I appreciate your point because I mean just the underlying principle of even if everyone is doing one thing, that does not mean it's right. I would agree with that.
Yeah, but so you can look at the history of shopping carts. No, but
If you're still listening at this point, just let us know in the comments.
I
You
was
are
gonna
a
say,
trooper.
we need to wrap this up.
I'm so mad about this because Jimmy doesn't get it. No.
Oh, I get it.
He does. He's playing devil's advocate.
No, I know, and I appreciate that about you, Jimmy.
So I think we should, though. I think we should wrap this up. You should let us know in the comments if you agree with
How do you
Jimmy.
feel about this?
Put your carts back in the cart
If
corral, you savages.
If everyone jumped off a bridge, would you do it?
Because it's the right thing to do. Yeah, so, okay. But yeah, so
You
the
return.
worldview, I think it shows who you are as a person if you do or do not put your
How
cart
you
back.
do anything is how you do everything.
It shows, yes, it shows somewhat of how, yeah. That's a good line to end with. Do that. Say that again for us.
Anything is how you do everything.
Okay.
Let us know in the comments. Hey, everybody, I'm Chris.
I'm Adrian.
And I'm Jimmy.
We'll see you next time with some wiki fun.